Al McFarland. Welcome to the conversation with Al McFarland. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Well, today is Thursday, February 19th, 2026. And what I have in mind today is just a conversation with friends of mine, people I know that I'm acquainted with, who all of us are concerned about, the acknowledging the passing of the Reverend Jesse Jackson. He died Tuesday, and we're having a conversation about what his life and work meant for our community, not only around the world, but here in Twin Cities as well. We want to invite you to be a part of the conversation. And if you want to do that, we'll post on the screen a QR code. Click on that. We'll invite you into the conversation. We invite you also to share this conversation with your networks, your friends. We are streaming live to Facebook and to LinkedIn, and of course to the YouTube channel of the Black Press of America and Insight News. We want you to share this conversation with people. Let them know we're having the conversation, and we'd love to have your voice in the conversation as well. Let me begin by connecting with one of my old friends and partners and collaborators here in Minneapolis, and that's attorney Clinton Collins Jr. Brother Clinton, good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Hey, I'm kicking, but not high.
Okay, well, at least kicking, right? That's good.
Trying to do good and avoid evil.
Well, let's jump right in. When you got the news about the passing of Jesse Jackson, what kinds of thoughts came to your mind? My mind just reflected on the times I met him and talked to him, but more than that, the environment of change in the country and the drama that involved all of us in pursuing, as you said, justice and freedom and what should be the American way, I'd say the human way. What came to your mind as you reflect on a personage like Jesse Jackson and his transition?
Well, a number of things. I thought about my parents who were civil rights activists in the 1960s in Mississippi. And my dad ran for public office. They're the first Black person to do that in Mississippi since Reconstruction. And then I thought it was people like Jesse who were able to take what people like my parents started and take it several levels beyond that. And without Jesse, there wouldn't have been a Barack.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so describe the environment that you grew up in and what you understood life to be for your parents and how all of this evolved into forward movement that Jesse epitomized and also activated.
Well, when I was about 4 or 5 years old, the Klan burned a cross in our yard. I remember that. And because no Black man had run for public office in, 80 years in Mississippi since Reconstruction.
What town were you in?
Town was called Laurel, Mississippi, small town, about maybe 90 miles from Jackson to the southeast. And so my parents always said, hey, you do what you can, where you can, and you don't accept second-class treatment. And Jesse epitomized that. I had a chance to meet him once on a case that actually you had referred to me. And I was just impressed with the breadth of his knowledge. I mean, he was there from the beginning or nearly the beginning. And he was a link to that era to people like Martin Luther King. And it's like if Martin Luther King was Moses, Jesse was Joshua. And I remember that campaign in 1988 very seriously. I mean, he was a credible candidate, very credible. And I remember when he met with Mike Dukakis up in Boston, who was the eventual nominee. And Jesse carried clout. When he spoke at the Democratic Convention in '88, he was in prime time. And I thought to myself, I was a young man, just started to practice law. I thought I think maybe there's a chance I'll see a black president in my lifetime, which I did.
Mhm.
But Jesse made me realize that that was not just a pipe dream, that it could really happen. And, so yeah, I mean, it was a sad day for me when I found out. I mean, he was getting up there in years, and he had some illness,
Mhm.
but he touched a lot of people. He certainly touched me, and he was a hell of a speaker. He could bring it on, and I think I remember back in the early '70s when he would have stadiums full of young people say, have him repeat after him, "I am somebody.
That's right.
I am somebody." And at that time, when I first heard that, I was 12, 13. And my parents had already taught me that. But then to hear someone like that say it on national TV, I thought, yeah, right on. That's right. I am somebody. And Jesse epitomized that.
Let me bring in one of the people here that was very close to Reverend Jackson, and that is Spike Moss. Spike Moss is a friend of yours and of mine. Spike, good afternoon, brother. Good to see
Good
you.
afternoon. Good
Yeah,
afternoon.
Hey,
you're
Spike, how you doing?
Just fine. How you doing?
Hey, as I told Errol earlier, said I'm kicking but not high. I'm just trying to, I told him I'm trying to do good and avoid evil.
if you got some lights, Spike, you need light on your face. I don't know if you can get a light or a spotlight, but we're good. But talk about your relationship with Reverend Jackson, because you probably more than anybody else in Minnesota had a close tie with him. And what did it mean to get the information? You knew that he was going through health challenges, and talk about that if you would. That's perfect for the light. Perfect.
All right. Well, for me, I started dealing with him when I was 18 years old. And we created a relationship where if I needed him, I could call. If he needed me, he could call. And we were meeting all over the country like that. But in terms of the illness, it was your organization that invited me to speak in New York to all the black
Hmm.
newspapers and magazine convention.
Hmm.
And you had Al Sharpton do the breakfast, Jesse did the lunch, and I did the dinner. But early that morning, Jesse called me and he said, "Come on downstairs, Spike, let's get some breakfast." So I went down there, and in the booth where he was sitting, Al, he lined up 17 different pills in one row with one glass of water. I knew it was bad, but he didn't bring up what's the problem, so I didn't ask what's the problem. The next time we got together, it was so bad at that point, I'm not even going to bring it up, but it was really bad. He still wouldn't say what was going on, and he still kept moving. So the last time I was with him, we were here for George Floyd, and he had 4 people drive him up here, and I took him everywhere he wanted to go. He wanted to go to 38th Street. He wanted to go to the funeral. He wanted to go with the family gathering. I took him to all of that in 2 days. And that was the time when I learned it was really, 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 really bad, but he still wouldn't say anything. But for me, I learned so much marching alongside of him, so much calling him for marches. That loyalty that he gave me, I gave right back to him. Can you hear me? I lost your voice.
I had muted myself. What did
Oh, you
Jesse
muted
Jackson?
yourself.
Yeah, what did Jesse Jackson mean to the movement? When people think of movement, they think of, let's say, W.E.B. Du Bois. They think about Marcus Garvey. They think about Elijah Muhammad. They think about Louis Farrakhan. They think about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael. There are lots of luminaries, big names of people whose lives and contributions involved and embodied massive change, like
Mm-hmm.
global change. Nelson Mandela, and I think Jesse Jackson was in that arena as well. Uh, Give a
I would
sense
put
of
him there, but
how you viewed him and how he moved in the country and in the world.
well, one of the things that I agreed with Minister Farrakhan about, I used to have lunch and dinner with him at his house, and he said Jesse was one of the most brilliant black men he'd ever met.
Hmm.
And I was paying attention to that. I never seen nobody so intelligent and mind move so fast on all issues with total clarity. But on the other side, he was braver than most people. If you wanted us to stand down or back up or we're going to jail, Jesse's going to come forward. And that's the main lesson I learned from him. I thought Martin had that courage. I thought Martin loved us enough to risk his life, but I thought Jesse was at least 20, 30 times bolder. So
That's
whatever you're
amazing.
trying to say, huh?
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was about no matter what you did, he's standing for you. And so if you're going to do something, you're going to have to do it because he's not backing up. Matter of fact, when we represented the migrant workers, the Latino migrant workers, they underpaid, wasn't being treated right. They asked Jesse, would he come and lead the march? And Jesse called me to come and go with him. And I remembered the police was armed like it was a war going to happen. Bulletproof vests, the nightsticks was about 4 feet high. And they had their gloves on, sandbag gloves. They were ready to beat all these Mexicans up. And they gave us a warning of how many minutes to get out of the street. And I swear to God, Jesse locked my arm with his and said, let's go, and went right at him. But I was so used to seeing him do that, I was not surprised. He sticks to the mission and the love of people. If he made any mistakes at all, he believed that this country could integrate. He really believed that. And if that was a mistake, that would be it, because they still have not allowed integration. They are still as racist as they were when he got started. There were so many states that had the Southern mentality that I wasn't surprised in Texas. I wasn't surprised in Alabama. I wasn't surprised in Memphis or Detroit or New York or Washington or even Pennsylvania of what I saw, Ohio, what I saw. And because it was greater than the South. We grew up thinking it's only in the South, but the Jim Crow in the North was just as bad as the South. And he had the courage, no matter where he was at, he is going forward. No matter how you talk, how you threaten, he was going forward on your behalf. And I watched people always trying to pick out things about him they didn't like rather than support like they should their own movement. Can you imagine what people like him or I would have accomplished if our people would have got on board rather than constantly looking for something wrong and something to criticize rather than just stand up? Today, we would be a free people by now.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still, the most we got is the civil rights movement. We did not get the human rights. We did not get the freedom that comes under the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. So this battle's not over, and you no longer have Jesse to be one of the towers to lead this struggle.
I'm Al McFarland. This is The Conversation with Al McFarland. I'm talking to Spike Moss and Clinton Collins Jr. Spike, we call him a freedom fighter, leader of the freedom fighting movement here, revolutionary and community builder here in Minnesota and around the country, and a close confidant of Reverend Jesse Jackson. Clinton Collins, a retired attorney, but still practicing law and active in community as well. Clinton, before you came on, Spike, was talking about growing up in Mississippi and how his parents, his family experienced a cross burning in their front yard because they dared to be active in the political process. And so this issue, while we think about the South, you said that the challenges we face are really in every aspect of the country, the North and the South. And Jesse kind of brought attention to that. Talk more about that. Clinton, jump in where you want to as well.
No, I agree absolutely, Al, with what you said, that Jesse was willing to be in your face, as opposed to piggybacking on what Spike said. Martin Luther King was more of a conciliator and was a little more, I don't know, say diplomatic, but he was more careful to not alienate people as he advocated. Whereas Jesse didn't care if you got pissed off. He didn't care if you didn't like what he was saying. And I think that was really important after the civil rights movement to reach, Black people at the ground level. Martin Luther King wanted to, again, have this consensus with white people, and he was very eloquent. But when you look at the people around him, most of them were professional Black people, educated, whereas Jesse brought in the masses. And Jesse believed that if you're going to be a potent force, you got to include everybody, not the what W.E.B. Du Bois used to call the talented 10th. You got to get in the streets and you have to meet people where they are and get them to believe that they can accomplish stuff. And I think that's what his two presidential campaigns did, is that, especially in 88, it made it clear that, a black person could run a national campaign because he won like 11 primaries, South Carolina and I believe Texas. I know a number of states in the South, and states where, yeah, there was a big black presence, but you also had to have some white support in order to win the primaries. So he was able to, one, I think, appeal to white people without being, in their mind, a Stokely Carmichael. But on the other hand, given how he grew up, single parent household, he grew up dirt poor. He could go and talk to people in what we call the hood and say, I understand your struggle. I have been there and you can do it. Whereas Martin Luther King came from a middle class black family. His dad was a minister. He went to Morehouse, which is kind of, at those days, the black Harvard. And but I think Jesse's greatest appeal was what he came to call the Rainbow Coalition.
I heard a speech of his today, I guess it was yesterday, and it might have been one of the convention speeches. I think maybe the first convention, and the refrain was that I understand, I get this. And he said, when I was born, my name was not Jesse Jackson. He had a different name because he didn't know his name, and he took on the name of his grandmother. I can't remember the name he said it was, but it was some years later when he developed the name Jesse Jackson. But he talked about being born not in a hospital, but in a 3-room shack or house with the bathroom as an outhouse outdoors. And he talked about all of these conditions, that tried to reduce our people to nothingness. That's the way of the world at that time. And he was saying that beyond that, I think that led into him declaring our somebodyness. And so, Spike, what do you think people saw? What did they hear? What did they feel as they were?
I think they saw everything you said and they felt it because so many of us had experienced it. I don't know if I ever shared with you, Al. In my hometown, there was a medical facility, but it was whites only. And we had 170 miles to go to get to a hospital except blacks. And I had 2 sisters and a brother born before me, but none of them got off that table. They all died on that table. You take a butter knife, put a cloth around it, tell your mother to bite down and push. I was my mother's first child to survive the midwife on the table. And so you look at 30-40% of your family is going to die because you got to try to drive that 170 miles. You can't send an ambulance that far, and you got to get it from a black hospital. You either got to get to St. Louis or back then, Kansas City. And so most of them had a number 2 hospital. You know what I mean? So Jesse, I know what he went through because Jim Crow was alive and well. Every summer that I went home, it was still there. But the fact remains, the reason I kept bringing him here, Jim Crow was here, Al. When we got here, it was here. And it was just like down south. And so you stand on what you know shouldn't happen. You stand on what you want to do for things to be better for your people, and you buy into it. I believe Jesse bought into it, hook, line, and sinker, that I'm going to fight to the end of my life for my people's rights. And I'm going to fight, he said, to bring people together. And he really believed he could. But the bottom line is, even if he didn't, look at the thousands upon thousands of people who followed Jesse's voice of all nationalities. That was just reality. He completed it.
Clinton, go ahead.
No, I absolutely agree because I mentioned earlier that second campaign where he wasn't the nominee, but he gave Dukakis and the others a run for the money. And I very much remember the speech he gave in prime time at the Democratic National Convention. And and as I said earlier, thinking to myself, this man, if he does not become president someday, he at least should remain a national voice. And if we get a Democrat in the White House, that he should be seriously considered for a cabinet post. And as I've said earlier, I think one of his greatest contributions was to get Black people to believe that despite the obstacles, you could become president. And Barack Obama admitted several times, if there hadn't been a Jesse paved the way. And I know for a lot of younger Black people that time in the 80s, early 90s, to see a Black person who was prominent enough to be featured routinely in national political discussions and whose voice mattered, especially if you were like me or who was born in the South and was led to believe by the people I knew, my relatives and family, that we would never see a Black president. And I thought, yeah, I think we can. I think we can. Because he demonstrated to white people, because he was able to get that prime time attention, that there are intelligent, smart Black people out there who are capable of running the country, that have ideas and thoughts and the conviction to do what it takes. And as Spike mentioned, was fearless. He put it out there, and I'm sure he had many threats on his life, but he had that conviction that what he was doing was the right thing to do, and that by doing it, he could encourage other people to stand with him.
So, to people who are listening on any of the platforms, like the show, share it with your colleagues. And if you want to join the conversation, we want to have your voice in this as well. Go ahead.
Pardon me,
ahead.
I'm sorry. Sure. I got to deal with my dogs.
All right, no problem.
Keep going there.
So again, if you're listening, shout out where you are, that you're checking the conversation out, and join the conversation. We're going to put on the screen a QR code. If you want to come in the conversation, we'll bring you in, and we appreciate your feelings, your stories. Looking for stories. If you knew Jesse Jackson, if you were involved in a protest or a church service or Operation Breadbasket, Operation Push, or any of the work with Dr. King, I'd love to have you tell your story, your memory of Jesse Jackson. And you can also do that in the chat. You can go to the chat on any of the platforms and just shout out yourself, your location, mention your story. And again, if you want to join the program, you can join. I'm going to ask our producer, Jared, put the link, the QR code, and maybe in the scroll as well. Let people know that they can get on the program right now. Spike, Jesse was also not only national, but global. Did you have a sense of the impact he was having in the whole world? What do you think?
I thought that was the boldest things he did, because he put himself in direct harm's way where he might not have returned back to America. He crossed over in a path where most government officials don't want African Americans to be part of. He wasn't representing Washington, D.C., but he was representing humanity, freedom and justice and the safety of those people. And he had the nerve to go and do it, which meant he could have never came back home. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, it's like when the Middle East was sending that money over here to help African American people, and they were going to send it to the Nation of Islam, and they threatened them that they better not take that money to help our people. And Jesse went over that boundary when he took that plane and went overseas twice. And I'm just saying that, but that's the boldness in him, the arrogance in him, the braveness in him, and his respect for humanity. He would have risked his life like that. I'm telling you, in all my marches, I've never seen anybody that bold. No matter what you got, what kind of gun you got, what your threat is, he like locks you out and comes up on you, right up on you. He mans up all the time. And I had to learn that from him.
Yeah, one thing that he reminded me of was when he went abroad and did successfully negotiate for people, hostages. He did that a number of times. And he was able to reach people, cultures that the president of the United States could do. That for example, I'm trying to remember where one of the hostage situations were.
One
And
was
we had,
Iraq. One was Iraq, I think.
yeah, we had, a high level delegation over there, and they couldn't get through. And Jesse was able to do it. He was able to take that force of personality, that sincerity, that conviction that everyone had value, and it was so strong that foreign governments trusted him. They believed he was sincere. They didn't see him as a politician. They saw him as a man of the people. And they had good reason to not trust politicians. But Jesse made it clear that his concern, as Spike said a number of times, was for humanity. And there are certain things that we're all entitled to, no matter what color we are or what religion we are. And the fact that he went over to these places and was able to convey that, hey, maybe you don't like the American government. Sometimes I don't either. But you can trust me because I believe in American values, even if we don't always project them. And I think that was a big part of his negotiating the successful release of a number of hostages.
I pulled up a note here. This was in 1990. My notes say that Reverend Jesse Jackson undertook a high-stakes independent diplomatic mission to Baghdad to negotiate the release of Western hostages following Iraq's invasion of Kuwait. And his efforts were a direct response to Saddam Hussein's use of foreign nationals as human shields to deter military action from the U.S.-led coalition. So that's the story. And I remember, Spike, I mentioned this to you earlier. I got a call in the middle of the night from one of our neighbors here in North Minneapolis, Jeffrey. I'm trying to think Jeffrey's last name. It'll come to me in a minute. But he was on Reverend Jackson's staff. And he called up and said, Al, I'm in Baghdad. I said, what? Is this a joke? No, I'm with Reverend Jackson, and he's here on a mission to free some of the hostages being held by the Iraqi government. And it was just amazing. And what he said to me is, I called because I need to tell somebody in case things go the other way and we don't get out of here. But that typifies that fearlessness you're talking about, Spike, and that fearlessness was global in reach and magnitude and respected, and it was successful. Let me pull up something here real quick. Here's I don't know if I can, let's see, on my screen here, let me stop it, but let me tell, hold on. Jared, I was able to pick up from Gemini a link to a YouTube video of Jesse Jackson, and the title of it is When Jesse Jackson Took on Saddam. So Jared, if you can find that on YouTube, we can play a piece of that. And then there was also another one. Let me finish what it says. So it says the mission and release, the negotiation, Jackson met directly with Saddam Hussein and other Iraqi officials. He framed his mission as a humanitarian effort, often describing himself as a citizen of the world or a journalist to navigate U.S. restrictions on diplomatic contact with Iraq. And the result, it says, is that Jackson successfully secured the release of hundreds of hostages, including American and other Westerners with serious medical conditions. So go ahead and play the video.
The hostage flight had waited for Reverend Jesse Jackson to arrive in Baghdad from Kuwait with 30 sick or elderly U.S. citizens.
Whenever hostages are released, it's always an expression of some hope. If war were to break out in the Persian Gulf, it would be a devastating blow to the nervous system, the backbone of Western industrialized nations. Too many young and innocent would die, blood would flow, oil wells would burn. If talks are impossible, then the war is inevitable. So let's talk.
The roar of engines in the darkness over a deserted Heathrow airport. The Iraqi Airways 747 making its landing approach on the northern runway.
And maybe you'll find some other clips that sort of typify his work both nationally and internationally. The notes I have say, one of the most famous figures freed was 5-year-old Stuart Lockwood, who was a British boy who had been filmed appearing as terrified as Saddam Hussein ruffled his hair on television. So Jackson personally carried Lockwood off the plane upon their arrival at Heathrow Airport. That's what you were going to see on September 2nd, 1990. So that's part of the story. He had requested a list of hostages with medical conditions from the U.S. Embassy before he went to secure their release. And the notes say that while he was successful, the mission was criticized by some Western officials and media as a propaganda victory for Saddam Hussein. Well, what's the legacy impact? The mission was one of several high-profile hostage negotiations that he conducted both in Syria in '84, also in Cuba in 1984, and in Yugoslavia in 1999. That's amazing. Just so our people know, Reverend Jesse Jackson passed away this week on February 17th at the age of 84. And his role as an informal international negotiator remains a significant part of his legacy in the U.S. civil rights movement. Another colleague, one more, he negotiated the release of Navy Lieutenant Robert Goodman from Syria in 1984 as well. And I think it was the Syria mission where I got the call from Jeff, not Baghdad, but it was actually in Syria when he was working to release Goodman. But that makes it close. Bill English has joined us too. Bill English, good afternoon and welcome. Let me get your camera set up here. Can you bring your camera down some so that you're in? There we go. Perfect. Bill, how you doing, man?
Well, I'm hanging in there.
Yeah.
I've been listening to my good friend Harry Spank Moss, and I haven't seen the other guest in a long time. Yeah, I haven't seen him in years. And they got it right. Spike and I were laughing yesterday about he needed to get to the airport. He was here, and I was driving him, and he said, "Miss English, you need to no." Well, like I told you, he knows my friend Henry Hardy, whom you know, and I'm going to give Henry the number. He's been trying to call it. Henry's in Chicago. He was the voice for Bush and Breadbasket and Rainbow Coalition, the television and the radio voice. So he was at Jesse's house last week. As a matter of fact, he was there yesterday with the family. So he was waiting in Chicago to get on, and I couldn't get on for some reason. And then I realized I had to get in through YouTube. Then I was able to get in. But yeah, so that's one story. And Spike said, "Well, we call them fast mail." Or something to that effect. He gave me some nickname, and Spike is typical to do. But he said, he's getting you to the airport on time. I think you better let him drive. And we got him there. He did make his flight. But no, he was, everything they've said, Spike has said in particular, I agree with.
So here's the question I want us to sit in for a bit is sort of analyzing what this arc of change has meant. Clinton started off talking about Bill being born in Laurel, Mississippi, and his parents and his family experienced. I
can't hear Al.
Okay, can you hear me, Bill and Spike? So Clinton, if you can hear me, go out and come back in.
Bill, can you hear him?
Yeah, I hear him.
I'm gonna take.
I don't know what's going on.
Take him out and just have him reboot and come back in. So this is technology. But I want to talk about just this whole thing of change in our country. And we are, not that far from enslavement, from slavery. And we've come a long way since that time. but we have to be mindful that it seems that the current holder of the White House is trying to recreate the collapse of Reconstruction and the reemergence of Jim Crow. White people right now are being empowered to talk crazy like they used to, and with an expectation that Black people would take low. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's the environment. ICE is here in Minnesota, in my point of view, just like the slave catchers roamed the South, giving birth to modern American policing. So if you all would, Spike and Bill and Clinton, when you come back in, talk about this whole arc of movement towards freedom, the fight that we have been in from the days of enslavement, but where we are now, and sort of weave into that the kind of role that Jesse and men and women like him played. Bill first and then Spike.
Well, let me say this. As far as I'm concerned, we are where Du Bois said we would be at the turn of the last century. To turn of the last century, he said America's greatest problem will be race. It has not changed. Have we made some progress? Yeah, we're no longer enslaved, but for all practical purposes, we are not fully free. We can't control our economy, can't control our communities. We can't control much of anything. Yet we are politically active. And Minnesota is a classic example. I'll give you an example of the progress of their or lack thereof, as I say. Bobby Joe Champion, president of the Senate. Bobby Joe should be the Senate Majority Leader. 4 years ago, they cheated Jeff Hayden out of the Senate Majority Leadership by allowing the Somalis to cheat. And when he took it, and for example, Jeff had 160 of his people didn't even get ballots because COVID. It was all virtual, as you will recall, the state convention. And there was 140, according to Corey Day, South Somalians whose address didn't exist. So they got 140 votes. So they cheated him out. Now Bobby Joe, the lady gets sick. Bobby Joe steps in as president. He gives the governor, he keeps the caucus together, gives the governor everything he wants, including $1 billion for affordable housing. And guess what? They turn around and they elect another white woman as Senate Majority Leader over Bobby. So I'm simply saying, relating to the kind of things that Jesse was fighting for. And I remember, Mike, you might, I don't know if you might have been too young when you went to the first Black political convention in Gary, Indiana. Richard Hatcher was mayor. And over 10,000 Black folk showed up in Gary that day. I will never forget the keynote speaker was a surprise. It was Ossie Davis, the actor. I will never forget the title of his speech. It's not the rap, but it is the map. It's not the man, but it is the plan. And then he espoused on that. And I left an impression. A very young Jesse Jackson was there. Jesse was just emerging into the scene that a mentee of Martin Luther King. So, as we reflect on his life and the times that he gave to this country, the commitments he made, and all the great things he's done, only reflects the fact that we are still fighting for the freedoms that Jesse fought for. Today, right here in Minnesota, we're still fighting for the same level of freedom. And the examples I just gave you is a good indicator of that.
Bill, tilt your camera down some because you're still not centered in the screen there. There we go. So we keep you close in. Yeah. Perfect. That's perfect. Spike, react if you would. Respond to that if you would.
Well, when we went to Indiana, I was asked to come as a youth with a different perspective and speak. It was the reason I was there. And I also went to the party afterwards. I don't know if Bill remembers, the black contractors built our first black mayor a home, and the reception was in that home. But the people came from all over the country to see the first black mayor of his city, and it was great.
Who was that?
But I got
that
Mayor Hatchard, Gary,
Hatchard.
Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
He was our first, and we were all invited. We came from all over, you know. But I'll speak about two things, Al, that you said earlier, in terms of where we go from here. To Bill's point, you're trying to roll us back 70 to 75 years or more of the progress we made, starting with removal of affirmative action and the money that goes to black colleges and our history and our books in school. It's going to go on and on and on, because the things that they love are alive and well, and they have not changed that much. So they will continue to move. When you went to school, Bill went to school, I went to school, those are 3 generations. But one of the things we learned, Bill, Hitler removed the police from the street and brought the Nazis to run the law and order on the streets. He removed the government of Germany and put forth the Aryan race. Here we are in America, removing the police on the street with a group called ISIS in place of the Nazis. And in place of the Aryan race, you're going to make that the Republicans, which means the same thing is going to happen. You're going where? Concentration camps. The difference is people of color are going. They were white Germans going and white Jews going that didn't fall in line with Hitler. The other thing that matters is you learned in school that the great Roman army conquered all those countries, killed and ruled all their leaders, took everything they had of value, and became the great Roman Empire. But regardless of what we say about the Romans, the empire imploded from the inside out. America is in the process of imploding from the inside out. Anytime you say, which was it a week ago, Al, when in Philadelphia, they went to the slave museum and tore it down in your face, when they tell you that they don't want no talk about slavery because it makes them feel bad. How do you feel bad than the victim who came through slavery? But it bothers you too much to see it. You say you want to get rid of everything that's got to do with Martin Luther King and including this holiday, not just his statue. You want to roll us back. If we're willing to go back, we will. This is an hour, Al. If we ever needed to come together as a people with our differences, any foolishness, you better be ready now, because none of us on this podcast will know what this man is going to do next, because you got to remember, he's allowed to do it in the land of the free and the home of the brave. He's allowed to do it. Now, the last thing I would say is the steps of South Africa, when he brought that boy over here from South Africa with the car, what's his name? That did the Hitler salute on the stage?
Yeah.
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, yeah.
If you remember South Africa, where he came from, how did we move around in that city? We had to have a card credential to allow us to move in our own country. Here comes this country. Now you got to change your driver's license that allows you to move around. Do you see the repeat of all of this madness? It's all the same. It doesn't matter if you call it ISIS or Nazis. It doesn't matter if you call it the pass or the driver's license. You are getting permission to move now or not move. And so it will be worse than what Bill witnessed. Bill's from the South, you from the South, I'm from the South. It's going to be worse than Jim Crow. It's going to be worse because you got a man whose number one hero was Hitler. Putin's number one hero is Hitler. And they are both moving historically the way their leader moved.
I put some links, Jared, in the chat. You might be able to pull up some of those. Those are some of the speeches that Jesse made. But I want to really dig deep on what you're saying.
I want to get to something now.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill. Go right ahead. Jump in. Bill, go ahead.
Okay. There's something here that we need to think about as we have this conversation. We need to think about, number one, that this election is the most important one of all of our lives. Now, of everybody on this table, I'm the oldest one here. I'll be 92 on May 18th, God willing, and the creek don't rise. That's an old statement that we all know what it means. But what I have seen, and I went to, back as you know, I went to Cicero. When we marched in Cicero, Jesse was there. We didn't march in Cicero in those days. Daly lived in Cicero. So over and over again, I've seen the evidence of our willingness to protest. And let's say this, our protest, look at Minnesota this other day. The protest was about 2 white people got killed. George Floyd got killed and moved the whole world. 2 white people got killed. So we have to remember as we move forward that King had allies. Jesse had allies. They were white. Okay? And so we have to recognize there was that the woman from Detroit that got killed in Selma, the march in Selma. Viola Lee, from Detroit. So this goes back. And so where we are now, as Spike is calling out, these are dangerous times. As Clinton called out, these are extraordinary times. These are extraordinary times for us to recognize that the death of Jesse reminds us of how much work we have yet to do. And we don't afford to have our leaders get caught up with their ego, because we know the real truth. We know they have egos. They don't always get along, and they sometimes fight each other. Yeah, we witnessed that right here in Minneapolis when Jesse was here and Sharpton was here. How that greater friendship met church. They weren't going to let Jesse on the stage until Jerry McAfee said, oh, yeah, he's going to get in, and Jesse took the stage. He was sick then. But anyway, my point is we cannot afford to allow our leaders to let their ego get in the way, because right now we have got to all stay connected and be willing to work together. And that's where I am, and I've heard my three colleagues on here say essentially the same thing.
Yeah, Clinton.
Yeah, there was a phrase. I spent 21 years in the military, both active duty and reserve. And one of the things you learn early on in the military, there was a phrase we would use: cooperate and graduate, which is basically what Bill was saying, is that if there was ever a time that we as a people cannot afford to be splintered, it is right now, because the Republican Party and the so-called Christian nationalism that they have convinced not only white people, but we got to remember that Trump got a fair amount of black support. There were a lot of young black men that voted for Trump in this last election. And you still have what we used to call, and I'm just going to put it out there, in the day back in the South, Uncle Toms that still support this fool, even after the caricature he did of President Obama and Michelle Obama as apes. So I think for the older people, our elder statesmen like Spike and Bill, we really have to make sure we pass on, especially to these young black men, that, hey, a lot of people died to place you in the position to vote. A lot of people lost their livelihoods and were ostracized and had all kinds of negative consequences to make sure you could ride on a bus and sit in the front, or you could go to a restaurant and be served. And I think something that we really need to focus on is to make sure young people don't forget that struggle. My wife teaches St. Paul Public Schools, and she's taught both middle school and grade school. And she said it was amazing how much kids today don't know. There are black kids that she was teaching who didn't know the name of the state they lived in, who couldn't name the governor of Minnesota. And one thing that back in the day my parents made, and I'm sure Bill yours, was that we didn't rely on white people to pass on our history. We learned at an early age the lyrics to lift every voice and sing. And we got to get that back. We got to get that back because the fact that Trump was able to get 25% of young black men to vote for him, that means that we, the older people, have failed to make sure that our history and our legacy gets passed on, because the Christian nationalists and the Republican Party in general is banking on that generational ignorance so that they can spout all this crazy mess, and the younger people don't have a perspective to say, no, that's not right. That's not how it went down.
Let's check this clip out. A couple of clips. One, we'll play this for a second and come back. Jared, go ahead and play it.
Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive on tomorrow night and beyond.
Young America, hold your head high now. We can win. You must never stop dreaming. Face reality, yes, but don't stop with the way things are. Dream of things as they ought to be. Dream. Face pain, but love, hope, faith, and dreams will help you rise above the pain. Use hope and imagination as weapons of survival and progress, but you keep on dreaming, young America. Dream of peace. Peace is rational and reasonable. War is irrational in this age and unwinnable. Dream of teachers who teach for life and not for living. Dream of doctors who are concerned more about public health than private wealth. Dream of lawyers more concerned about justice and the judgeship. Dream of preachers who are concerned more about prophecy than profiteering. Dream on the high road of sound values. You must never surrender to inequality. Women cannot compromise ERA or comparable worth. Women are making 60 cents on the dollar to what a man makes. Women cannot buy meat cheaper. Women cannot buy bread cheaper. Women cannot buy milk cheaper. Women deserve to get paid for the work that you do. It's right and it's fair.
Let's stop it there. That's really great. And we can see if we have any more clips. That's very powerful. Spike, what you think?
Oh, I love everything you did, but I was listening to the discussion before you played it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the problems we have, Al, the majority of the buildings we have are churches. All we have to do is the same thing on Saturday that the Jews do with Jews. Teach the Jews what it is to be a Jew in those churches on Saturday. The reason we're in the condition, we won't go in the basement of churches and discuss us, our responsibility, our health, our welfare, our love of self. So here comes a white man. He turns hip hop and he's going to promote to rap. In rap, he convinced them that you're going to sell far more tapes and CDs and records if you say the N-word, if you call our women B's and H's, and then they're going to buy it. But it's entering into your spirit and your soul and who you are. And instead of calling that girl Francine or Francis or Linda, you say, come on, B, let's go. And she answers, I'm coming, B. He's took into the very fabric of our families. Now, I will admit this. Probably none of us grew up without a mother and father. If you did, raise your hand. See, this is a generation where they're not even guaranteed a married mother and father to give you the way you should go and the way you should grow. Many of them have moms, but they don't have mothers. And a mother goes with you every step of the way to make sure you know what you need to know, Al. Put your shoe on like this, Al. You got your shoe on the wrong foot, Al. That's mother. And when you leave the house 18, 19, or 21 on your own, and she hears something she don't want to hear, she's still your mother. She's calling you up to ask you, is that true? And she's going to give you her position. When you got children that are not raised like that in Minneapolis in the last 2 years, then you watch the nightly news. I'm 7, 8, 9, 10 years old and stolen cars in the street at 12 and 11 o'clock at night. Because the family structure, the foundation is mother and father. And if you end up with just a mother, she's going to have to be a mother. There's no way we should have had 3 girls in a stolen car, 12 and 11 years old, running from the cops at late at night on the freeway. There's no way we should have had a 13-year-old boy with his 8-year-old brother in the back of a stolen car and the little brother, 8-year-old, gets shot to death. There's no way that we should have had 700 carjackings, mostly carjacking black women who give you the keys. You're still going to beat them up, stab them, or shoot them. But it's because the process that he's talking about, the foundation of the black family is eroded. They did not get what we got. I'm a grown man. I ain't never used the N-word on one of my people. I ain't never said B to one of these women out here. The Phyllis Wheatley taught us to never do any of that. And we didn't. We grew up without doing that. These people are going against everything that you love. They're comfortable with poisoning their people with drugs. You want to kill them and live next to them at the same time. How is that? You want to empty your gun in them, not just shoot them, empty it every day. I said in Bishop Howe's church, I said the Klan came together in 1814. Black boys have now killed more black boys in the Klan from 1814 to right now. I said the Vietnam War was 5 years long. We were 7% of the front line. We killed more black boys in the Vietnam War. So when you understand that, our responsibility has been dropped. I just told Bill the other day, I said to him, and he'll admit it, I said, Bill, there ain't never been a message you gave me that I kept. I gave it to them young brothers. You understand what I'm saying to you, Al? I admitted it to him. You gave it, but it needed to hit other people. I took it and ran with it. They never set me down and said something to me, and I didn't listen and hold it and pass it to the babies. And I know if we go back in the basement of the churches, we can rescue our people the way we did in that back room in the way. We can rescue our people again, but we got to want to do it. We got to stop ridiculing and criticizing and ignoring them. We got to set them down again the way we were set down. Bill left a professional job to walk in that building and tell us what he had on his mind, what he had on his heart. He didn't know then the value of that to kids that didn't know. But whenever he was speaking, we made them all stand still. Whenever he showed up, we made them all stand still because we knew they didn't know. And if you don't know, you're going to be calling each other the N-word. You're going to be doing all this crazy stuff. I don't blame them because we don't have the facility to take them to or the willingness to take them there. And they're absent in the mind of what it is to be an African born in America. They'll say stuff to you like this, Al. I ain't no African. I was born over here. I'm American. They can't even connect with their nationality. So it's our responsibility, like the show like this, we one day got to have that discussion on our responsibility to rebuild and regrow our people in the direction we should go. We've never had a generation in our history before and during slavery that moved without Jesus or God. We've never had a generation that went through slavery and didn't talk about, oh, Lord, come and get us. Oh, Jesus, help us. We never did that in Jim Crow. We spoke up. We called on God. We never marched without praying in the back room of the way. We never marched without praying in Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Memphis. We never did it. We never did it in Chicago. So you leave your religious foundation, your family structure foundation, and it's like a beautiful lawn, Al. You seed it, you water it, you grow it, you cut it, you trim it. If you don't touch it, it becomes wild weed.
Bill, what you think? Bill English? I think you might be frozen. Clinton, jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, a little story that feeds into what Spike is saying was that when I remarried and I was looking for a house to live, place to live, people said, don't go to North Minneapolis. And I was in a position financially where I could have lived in other parts of town. But I firmly believe, and I still believe, that one thing that segregation did do for us, you had a variety of Black people, different education levels, different income levels, all living in the same community. And what do the lawyers I know in town, the Black lawyers, very few live in North Minneapolis. They go to Edina. They go to Eden Prairie. And I understand why they do. I mean, there were times I thought about leaving North Minneapolis. But on the other hand, I realized, which is why I got involved in the Urban League and became board chair, that if you're going to talk the talk, you got to walk the walk, and you have to be where the people are who need your expertise and help. And I have preached that for years, that I get very frustrated with Black professionals, well-to-do Black people who say all the right words, but they don't live in North Minneapolis, and they aren't actively involved in a Black church or Black communities. Talk is cheap. If you really want things to get done, you got to be willing to get down in the trenches, which is what Jesse taught us. And in my own small way, I've tried to do. I've been in North Minneapolis for 25 years. And yeah, I get frustrated. My wife had her car stolen in front of the house. I had drug dealing in front of my house. But as my dad told me years ago, he said, you don't run from it, you confront it. Because if you don't confront it, it's not going to go away.
Let me ask Spike and Bill to close us out by taking off from there, Clinton, and talk about Jesse's focus on economic empowerment. One thing he did was bring the corporate world to the table and bring our people to the corporate table and demanded, Spike, a fair share. And he did that through strategy, through organizing, through philosophy, through moral and political persuasion. So where are we now? How do we ensure that we don't lose that which was envisioned as the engine to grow our people and to grow wealth in our community, to grow wealth and to grow sovereignty in our community? Spike, what do you think? And Bill, I'll have you wrap it up.
Well, Bill, I mean, Al, if you remember, I did the Fair Share campaign because I realized before they even did that research, I think the research was a year ago, where they announced, Bill can correct me, but I think it was a year ago, they announced that Minnesota had the worst banks towards African Americans in the entire country. And they said of those banks, Wells Fargo was the worst, but all of them were denying us through a law. The law says redlining is illegal, but you redlined against us till I finally came up with the Fair Share campaign to fight and push back. And Minnesota is still denying us, which is to his point about the neighborhood. If we were here, we could build our neighborhood, but we got to build our neighborhood because Minnesota wouldn't let us have a neighborhood. So things like Fair Share mattered. Even when we built our business district, Al, it's right there on Ocean Highway where the library is, and then you go east. And we were on both sides of the street. Minnesota looked at that business and that money and said, we're going to build a freeway through there. Came through there with eminent domain, tore down all the Black businesses. They never came back for our children to even witness that commercially we could do well in business because it was gone and it never was allowed to come back. Then they did the same thing over north to the Native Americans who live where the freeway is right behind my house. They came with eminent domains, tore down all their homes. They moved over there to Chicago and Franklin Avenue, and the Latinos moved over to West St. Paul. So they keep taking, but at least we knew what to build. We could build it again, and we need to build it again. So to his point about living here, those of us that live here, we got to champion them in a direction to build. And the point that he made about drugs, you can't tell me we can't do business, but we can always do drug business. You can't tell me we can't do business, but we can always do the after-hour joint and the bootlegger. No, we need to do legitimate businesses that he's talking about in our community and not allow. Bill knows when they were really out of order in North Minneapolis and breaking in these homes, I made the Black Patrol. I'd get your stuff back the same day, but you would pay the price for breaking in that Black house. We got to take control of ourselves and move on our people. I did the Black Patrol and the Soul Patrol. And I'm saying you got to do what you got to do. When we did the first Black Patrol, Bill would remember this. Martin Luther King died. White folks would come to Penn Avenue, turn on Plymouth, and shoot at everybody Black. For 91 days, the Black Patrol, South Side and North Side, and Native Americans fought back for 91 days in Minnesota. The world didn't know it because 4/5, 9/11 never showed it. And I'm saying that's how you get things done. You organize yourself and you move. And you got to organize yourself, like he said about the businesses, to change the culture, the attitude, that kids can see the positive things they can do. Once we stop leading them and this medium and everything else is leading them, you got what you deserve. Minnesota in America has more prisons than all the prisons of the world put together, and we're 80% of who's in them.
That's right. Let me
Bill, back up a little bit from the camera. There we go. That's better. Perfect. Yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
no, I want to make a couple points here. I want to first of all, Clinton.
Bill,
Did he freeze again?
Yeah, Bill froze. He'll probably come back in a couple of seconds here. You know, and when he does, so Bill's doing a lot of great stuff to promote businesses in our community right now, and I think that's an important initiative to focus on business. And Spike, Clinton, I want to also, while Bill's coming back in, talk about this whole global vision for what it means to be an African in America, a Black person. I personally have been fascinated by stories about change happening in places like Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, who created a cooperative experience called the Sahel. I think it's a coalition of the Sahel states. Mm-hmm. And what they've done,
They're wrapping it up.
Yeah, what they've done is changed the relationship between African wealth, African minerals, African genius, and the extractive, exploitative nature of Europeans. And how do we change that for us? That's kind of what I'm thinking about. But I think Bill is back. Bill, we lost you for a second. We're going to close out in about a minute, but your final comments, Bill.
Okay, my final comments are this. Look, we have, this is the most important election of our lives. Mm-hmm. Make no mistake about it. This still is a union that's far from perfect. Far from perfect. But if we don't take control of it, this current fascist in the White House will revert us back to days of which we are less than Reconstruction. We will be less than that. But the good news is there is a God. The good news is we know how to fight now. We know how to struggle. So we know what freedom will cost, and some of us are not afraid to give it. And we don't get rid of our allies. And that's all I'm going to say. We need our allies to work with us, but we don't need a damn person to lead us.
There we go.
Know how to lead.
Mm-hmm. Let's leave it there. Gentlemen, Bill English, thank you so much. Spike Moss, Clinton Collins, thank you so much. Reflecting on the life and the legacy of freedom fighter, Reverend Jesse L. Jackson. I'm Al McFarland. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Take care, brother.